Okay, this is the first video about intelligence testing. So intelligence testing is basically a way to assess somebody's intelligence, their aptitude, but it is also comparing it to other people. So you are comparing your intelligence to other people and how they do on intelligence testing. So to start with, we're going to talk about the the progression of intelligence tests over the years. So we start with Alfred Binet, and Alfred Binet was a Frenchman, and he believed that all kids basically follow the same developmental path. Some kids are just faster than others. Some kids are slower than others. So here's a picture of Alfred Binet, but he basically believed that people are, just follow the same path, and sometimes, they just follow at a different pace. So he was asked by the French government to develop a test to determine a child's mental age. The reason for this test was because he lived in a time where it was the first time that the French government was going to require all children to attend school. And there was a lot of people that were very concerned about this. They're like, oh, what about these poor kids over here? Are they going to be able to do these things that we're doing in school? So they asked Binet to develop an intelligence test to determine a child's mental age, to determine if they would be able to handle school, basically. So what happened was that he tested these kids, and he determined, based off from what they could do, their mental age. So this kind of chart here is looking at 100 children that were tested, and they were all aged 6. So they were 6 years old when they were tested, but what their mental age showed. So for example, 36 of the kids were a mental age of 6. So 6-year-olds, mental age of 6. Okay, great. Well, 24 of them tested were a mental age of 5. Another 24 were a mental age of 7. This was kind of normal, and if you would graph this, this would look a lot like a normal curve or a bell curve. So keep in mind that I always argue that, especially at this kind of an age, there's a big difference between a young 6 and an old 6. I mean, the 24 kids that were tested that, had a mental age of 5, they might have been closer to their 6th birthday than their 7th birthday. Or those kids that had a mental age of 7, maybe they're closer to their 7th birthday than they were to their 6th birthday. But Binet used this test to be able to determine what their mental age was. And he used the test to be able to determine, identify those kids that need extra help, basically, in school. He said that, I want to know those kids that are going to be needing extra help in school. So yeah, obviously, the kid that's 6 and has a mental age of 3, he definitely needs, or she needs, extra help, as well as the 7 kids that tested at 4. So he was wanting to use it as a way to improve schools. Now, many years later, after Binet died, this guy, Louis Terman, there's a picture of him, he's a Stanford University professor, and he took Binet's test, and he said, you know what, we can adapt this, and we can make it for adults. Yeah, that sounds like a great idea. So he wanted to adapt it and make it for adults, and he was not conceited enough to name it after himself. So he called it the Stanford Binet test because he worked for Stanford. So he said that he could develop IQ. So he basically, took a bunch of Binet's questions and, and upgraded them to an adult level. And so IQ, remember, stands for intelligence quotient. So he said to find the intelligence quotient, you take somebody's mental age and you divide it by the chronological age and you multiply it by 100. So basically it's kind of like a percent, right? So like, for example, on the last slide, the 6-year-olds that took the test, okay? The 6-year-old that took the test and their mental age was 6. So mental age of 6 divided by the chronological age of 6 multiplied by 100, their IQ would be 100. However, the kid that had a mental age of 3, okay, they had a mental age of 3 divided by the chronological age of 6 multiplied by 100, their IQ would be 50. Now, this sounds all well and good, and this works well for kids, but it doesn't really work well for adults. Okay, so for example, what does it mean to have somebody have a chronological age or a mental age of 40? Okay, what does that mean? I mean, most people that will argue that you grow in your intelligence, but it's not like your mental age is going to be any different from, say, a 30-year-old to a 40-year-old, right? So it doesn't really work that way. So IQ is no longer used for current intelligence tests. So if somebody is talking about taking an intelligence test, they're like, "Ooh, I'm going to get my IQ." No, that is not what you're getting. What you are getting when you get the score is, by the way, there's a bunch of adults taking intelligence tests. Okay, what you are getting, however, when you get your test is going to be in your score. It's going to be showing you how you performed compared to other people your age. Okay, so this is not telling you your IQ anymore. They don't do IQ anymore. So if you need to star C, this is huge. Okay, so if somebody tells you, for example, they took an intelligence test and they got a score of 100, what that means is that they're basically on par. They are, because average is 100, so they have an average intelligence compared to everybody else. They are basically like everybody else. Okay, so 100 is average, 100 is normal. So test scores reflect people's education and culture familiarity. So the test scores, what they have found is that the more educated you are, your intelligence actually increases. Now wait a minute, you're just like, wait a minute. You told me intelligence is not about the facts and figures. It's about being able to use that information, be able to creatively problem solve, for example. That is true. So why does education help intelligence? Well, if you think about it, education is trying to teach you how to think. Okay, so we're teaching you how to think outside the box. The more education you have, the more experience you have with that. So therefore, as a result, your intelligence goes up. Now, the culture familiarity, keep in mind that test that I gave you in class, the World War I intelligence test, that was actually developed by Terman, by the way, the guy in the picture. He actually developed that, but if you remember, the test was totally biased toward anybody that lived in the United States around 1915. I mean, even if you lived, for example, in the United States, one of the questions was asking about the largest industry in Minneapolis. Oh, I'm sorry, but there's a lot of people in the country that were probably very smart people that didn't know the answer to that question. That's a biased question. So test scores oftentimes, represent your familiarity with the culture that's actually issuing the test. And I have a cartoon that kind of goes along with this. You probably have seen this before. So they have a picture of a bird, a monkey, a penguin, an elephant, a goldfish, a seal, and a dog. And the guy at the desk says, "For a fair selection, everybody has to take the same exam. Now please climb that tree." Okay. Obviously, that is not a good representation of a good test. Obviously, we could equate each animal species as almost like a different culture. It doesn't work that way. Now, newer tests are better at being less biased than, for example, the test you took in class from Terman, but they still do have some bias that you have to understand the culture to be able to answer the questions well. Okay, so modern tests. What are modern tests like? So modern tests, we have achievement tests, which are going to be supposedly measuring what you have learned. Okay, so achievement tests are going to be any of the tests basically that you have taken in school. Okay, also including the AP test. The AP psychology test is supposed to measure what you have actually learned about psychology. Now, I always remind people, keep in mind, okay, that if you did not score as well as you want to on an achievement test, whether that be a test in class or the AP exam, keep in mind, okay, you didn't score as much as you wanted to. However, you did get some right? So you did learn something. Okay, so keep that in mind. Other types of modern tests, aptitude tests, these are supposed to predict your ability to learn things in the future. So an aptitude test is supposed to take what you be able to test on what you know now, and basically be able to tell how well you're going to do, for example, in college or at a job, for example. So one example of an aptitude test is the ACT or the SAT. You could also talk about intelligence tests as being aptitude tests because they are supposed to measure, they're not, measuring content as far as what you've learned. So people get frustrated with the ACT or the SAT. They're like, how am I supposed to study for this? Okay. They're measuring and they're trying to predict how well you are supposedly going to do in college or even how well you are going to do at a future job. Now, the last thing I want to talk about as far as modern tests are concerned is the Wechsler Adult Intelligence Scale, which was developed by David Wechsler. This one is the most widely used intelligence test today. It does have a general score as well as some subscores, so it kind of hits that idea from Sternberg of multiple intelligence, but it also hits Spearman's idea of a general intelligence. So it kind of hits both, but they are, it is the most widely used test. I do have a picture kind of illustrating some of the examples from the test. So the first one has a picture arrangement, so you're like supposed to move the pictures around. They'll show you several pictures, not just three. And this one looks pretty easy, so I think this might be like a kid one. But you're supposed to move the pictures around so they make a meaningful story. Object assembly, put together the jigsaw puzzle. Then you have this one, digit symbol, so this is going to be, it says use the key at the top to fill in the appropriate symbol beneath each number. The picture completion, supply the missing feature of the tricycle, and then the block design. So they will show you a picture of this, and then they will literally have blocks there that you're supposed to manipulate to try and create the design in the picture. So the point that I'm trying to make here is that intelligence tests, actual intelligence tests like the Wechsler Adult Intelligence Scale or even the Stanford Binet, those tests are not just paper and pencil tests. Yes, they do have a paper and pencil element to them, but good intelligence tests will be only administered, in a one-to-one setting by a trained person, a psychologist or a psychiatrist that knows how to score this. And so it's not just, a random, let's put up 50 people in the room and give them a test. It's not how it works. As well as all those lovely intelligence tests you come across on the internet, while funny and interesting, not necessarily accurate. So I wanted to keep that in mind. But that's how kind of the progression of the intelligence tests. In the next video, we're going to talk about how do you determine if a test is good. All right, thanks for watching. Let me know if you have any questions.